Hello and welcome to the Slobbery Crab podcast. I'm Shane O'Connor. He's Adrian Lacey. No, I'm not going to change. Oh, go on, I will change it. Welcome to the Comedy Slab podcast. And the first one of 2021, we should do a Steve Wright, woo, woo, hey, woo, etc., etc. You get the idea with that. You can tell it's the first one after Christmas because, you know, when you work in an office or wherever and everybody comes back after Christmas and they've all got their new jumpers on. Well, Adrian's got his new headphones on, so I knew.
It's my present to myself.
Was it?
No one else would buy me them. Yeah.
You seem to sport yourself an awful lot this Christmas.
I quite like myself.
Did anybody else get a present? Because I waited and nothing arrived from you.
Yeah, but that's situation normal for the past couple of years, isn't it, really?
It's true, yes, true. In all seriousness, and it makes you think, actually, we're getting it now, but we didn't get any post for about 6 or 7 days.
Right.
And it turned out I'm over-egging the pudding by saying there was a COVID outbreak, but somebody tested positive for COVID at the sorting office, and everybody who was working with them had to self-isolate. So consequently, there was nobody at the sorting office.
Doesn't leave many staff, does it?
Well, I just realised how popular I was because the backlog consisted of a demand to pay road fund for one of our cars and a postcard for the previous occupants. A Christmas card for the previous occupants of this house.
It's the nearest you're going to get, isn't it?
That brings you down to earth with a bump, doesn't it, really? But there you are.
Yeah. People will have noted one of our cars. Clearly you're landed gentry, so don't even think about whinging about your lot. Because you've got a lot.
One of our cars, we've got two cars. Mine, I got cheap. So
still a car.
There's a good reason for that. If you saw it,
right.
It's the only car I've ever known that's got Dutch elm disease. So quite
is it half timbered?
Quite quite a curious problem, but there you are. Anyway, sorry, if you've never heard the Comedy Slab podcast before, I'm Shane O'Connor, he's Adrian Lacey. We're separated, as we should be.
Socially isolated.
And when we get together, we cause far too much trouble. We're separated by, about 120 miles, something like that?
More than that. I looked it up once. Well, I don't know how the crow flies, but...
like that?
Not like that. I think via road, it's 170 miles. Anyway, moving on.
If you've never heard the podcast before, we love comedy. So much so that we set a time, sometime every week, to watch or to listen to a comedy programme that one or either of us has chosen. And we whack it on the slab. That's the kind of idea of where the name came from. The Comedy Slab is that we put it on and we give it a bit of an autopsy and we see what we thought of it. Which is what we're going to do. We choose alternately. So I choose one week, Adrian chooses the following week, and on it goes. And also at the end of the programme, we will give you give the show rather a mark out of 5 each, giving it a grand total out of 10. And we'll also throw in a couple of clips as well to give you an idea of the show that we're talking about. I'll mention that in a second, but around this time we do like to kind of give our take on some of the comedy news that's out and about, and I thought it was quite interesting, Adrian, that the figures for the year are out in terms of the most watched comedy programmes. And I said to you, I said, have you seen this? Do you want to have a look at it? I think it makes quite grim reading. You've had a look at it now. What do you think?
Yes, this just in. Well, the trouble is we're old and cranky, and mostly cranky and mostly old as well, to be fair. And we remember a time when ratings were, 4 times, 5 times as much. But, of course, there were fewer channels around. In terms of quality control, I confess I didn't see this one, but it was the revival of Blankety Blank. I think we did mention that, didn't we, in the run-up to Christmas, that there was going to be such a thing?
Yeah.
I seem to remember that featuring one week in our comedy news.
Because it was the one, I think it was being heralded as the fact that it was in the list of programmes on over Christmas, and this was the one that was going to be scheduled for Christmas Day, or one of the ones that was scheduled for Christmas Day. Because you worked on the original. We're saying about the original. There were 2 versions, weren't there? Of there was the Terry Wogan years, and
yes.
I was reminded. I watched a lovely program over the break about Les Dawson. I don't know if you saw it, about his life and work.
No.
And they had Lorraine Chase on, who used to be one of his regular guests on Blankety Blank. Mm-hmm. And she was saying, she said he was so clever, Les, though, because the first thing he did, he literally walked on set at the start of his first program in his tenure, and he broke the magic wand microphone that they used to use, that Wogan had. And she said, it's so clever because he just kind of stamped his and said, "Look, I'm in charge now. This is me." And he went, "Oh, get rid of that," and he threw it away, kind of thing. But you were in the Wogan. You worked on the Wogan era, didn't you? I think.
No, it was the Les Dawson era actually. Okay. Wogan predated, obviously, with the wand, as you say. It's a bit like the latest incarnation of Doctor Who, isn't it? One has to melt into the other one. Don't they do that anymore?
Yeah. I forgot. And then there was the Lily Savage version as well, wasn't there? Of course. So it's been through a few incarnations, but I don't know. I just like when you think the top watched comedy program of 2020 was a revival, a one-off revival of a 1970s originally, Blankety Blank, 1980s it would have been, wouldn't it? I think
it could just have tipped into late 70s. But it's a while away, and yes, I suppose that is depressing. Not to take anything from Mr. Walsh, but the other thing is, I don't really think of it as a comedy show. It's an entertainment show.
Yeah, it's light entertainment. Or it would have been light. Yeah.
We wouldn't put it on the slab, that kind of show, would we?
No. Well, quite a few of them actually. I mean, the Graham Norton Show is another one which came in at number 2. Is another one.
And there are laughs in it if you like his sense of humour. But
Michael McIntyre's Big Show. Comes in at number 8. And you're right. I mean, I'm not even talking about the numbers. I mean, the numbers they're almost an irrelevance now, aren't they, as you say, because they were recently slagging off the BBC for signing up Mrs. Brown's Boys until, was it 2024 or something ridiculous like that they've signed them on for, saying that they weren't getting the viewers. Well, they got 3.81 million, so they came in at number 6 of the top 10, which I suppose is quite respectable, isn't it?
Well, I thought Mrs. Brown's Boys has been doing better than that. It's Christmas Day is clearly not a typical day, but the thing is, you just have to lower your sights these days. I was years ago, I was in my sound technician days at TV Centre in the war. I was privy to a sort of conversation between department heads. So it was an in-house thing. It wasn't for broadcast, it wasn't a show. But they were saying then what we've got to get used to is gentle attrition, which was just a posh head of department way of saying we're going to get year on year lower and lower numbers. And sure enough, low it has come to pass. Very low it has come to pass. There's nothing you can do about that. There's only so many hours in the day, on top of which, I mean, the TV is not the only device by any means now, is it, for entertainment, when you've got video games?
No, I mean, I find myself now, and my brother started this, and he's older than me, and by that I mean that this is probably not a generational thing in that sense, because he's 7 years older than me, so significantly older. But he said to me a while ago, he said, I watch more more stuff on YouTube than I do on TV, and I remember at the time thinking, is he just over egging the pudding there, or does that, is he? But I find myself doing exactly the same now. So I'll sit there with my iPad, and I'll, some of the amateur made, for want of a better description, YouTube channels. There's one that I follow with an Irish guy called Mike who does true crime stuff, and it's fabulous. He's a really great presenter. He's quite witty. He's very succinct. It's well put together, the stuff that he does, and it would rival any TV program that's got a tens of thousands of pounds worth of budget behind it. Anyway, on with the podcast, as they say. Shall we dive right into the comedy that I chose for this week, which
set the scene.
Which is do you know, I've had it under my belt for some time. I've been thinking, I must do this, and I finally got round to chucking it into the mix. It's an interesting thing. It's from an American concept, and it's called Drunk History. For these purposes, we're calling it Drunk History UK, just simply because there is an American version, as I say, because that's where it came from. It was created by two guys, Jeremy Connor and Derek Waters, and essentially, I mean, it's kind of split into two halves, isn't it? Where you've got one story being told in the first half, and then the other side of the break, another story being told, and essentially the storyteller is. I think I'm right in saying I couldn't really get to the bottom of this, whether they were drunk before they started or were getting more drunk as time went on. But maybe we can discuss that in a little while. And they're trying to tell the story drunk, and generally they're comedians. And I mean that's it, isn't it? Oh, and the story that they're telling is acted out by other comedians as well, and they do a kind of lip sync to. The words of which kind of is, again, is an interesting concept. So you've got something visual to look at there as well. Whether that works as well, we can talk about in a little while. But before we get a headline and an idea of what you think of it, should we just head straight into the first clip? Is that all right with you?
Yes, I thought you might want to ask me what did I anticipate when you put it on the slab, but
okay,
I'm not going to insist.
No. Well, tell me, Adrian.
Well, my concern.
Let me ask the bloody question first. Hang on a second. Well,
I know what it's going to be. I can see it coming a mile off.
Can I just say, by the way,
yeah,
if I'm sounding a bit weird, the reason is because I thought I could sneak a love heart in, sweetie, whilst I...
Is that a euphemism?
Yeah, no, that's why I said sweetie, because I thought I'd better make it clear.
All right. All right, okay.
And I've just stuck it to the side of my mouth so that I could talk with it still in my mouth. And it's just producing...
I thought you'd had some kind of operation that had gone wrong.
I'm just producing huge amounts of saliva.
Why don't you spit it out?
It's gorgeous. It's really nice. I haven't had one for years. So, anyway...
Well, you can put it on the side and then put it in while we've got the first clip playing.
So anyway, Adrian, tell me what you anticipated.
Well, I thought that I knew nothing more than the premise that you gave me, which you've just given our dear listeners. And I thought, well, the problem with alcohol is it makes you think you're funnier than you are. Therefore, it could be quite a painful watch. I would say no more, but that was my first thought.
Now, whether it was quite a painful watch, we'll find out in about a minute and a half. So, two stories. The first half in the show was the story of the Great Train Robbery, the 1966 Great Train Robbery, Ronnie Biggs and all that. And the second half is the story of Beatrix Potter and the creation of Peter Rabbit. I think essentially is that fair enough? I think it's to say.
Yeah.
So it starts off with a clip from the first half then, and it's Joe Lycett telling the story, comedian Joe Lycett, who's actually from my neck of the woods, Brummie, isn't he? I think Solihull lad, I think, telling the story in the first half, and Kerry Howard telling the story in the second half. So, first clip, we hear Joe talking about the Great Train Robbery. He tells the story of how the gang met, first of all. Or his version of how the gang met. Because I'm quite familiar with this. I know this story quite well, again, being a fan of true crime. So, but more of that later. He tells his version of how the gang met and then gets straight onto the business of stopping the train.
So the train's approaching. It's approaching quickly. And Roger Corddry says, "This is my moment, guys. This is the time for me to show just how capable I am." They're like, how is Corddry going to do this? There's a green and a red light, but the green light is showing quite brightly. How is he going to stop a train? And then he just takes the glove off, just pops it over the green light. And they're like, is that it? And he's like, no. And then he gets the battery out of his pocket and put it into the red light. What you paid me the millions for. So the train stops. They get into the kind of cabin where the driver is. And obviously the driver's not cool about that. And he's like, piss right off. If you think you're getting my train with all these millions of pounds on it, you can go and shit in a well, actually. And they're like, no, we're having it. We are having it. And he's like, no, shit in a well. No, we're having it. Shit in a well. Somebody knocks him out for no reason.
People should know that I take my work on this podcast so seriously that I had a G&T before recording. And since you want... which it doesn't take much with me. People might know that one drink is enough, or more than enough, arguably.
You're trying to warn me that you're going to go and shit in a well before the end of the show. Is that?
No plans to, no immediate plans to. Although it could happen whether or not I plan to, couldn't it? Really,
Yeah.
with the demon drink. But be that as it may, I forgot to plan a headline. So I've got head lice. That's the next best thing, I suppose. Which is strange for a bald guy. No, what should we have? I thought of punk history, but that's not very good, is it? Can I buy some time and ask you if you thought of one, as you've asked me and put me on the spot in previous weeks, even though you don't have to think
I
of one.
didn't. That was the last thing I thought I'd got. We're potty training with my son at the moment, so you can imagine I'm playing Find the Pooh most of the time, mate, without thinking about headlines about anything really. So,
Oh, right. I didn't know it could be turned into a parlour game.
oh yes, if you do it right,
Or do it wrong.
do it wrong. Yeah.
Right. Well, I quite liked it, but only up to a point.
Which point did you quite like it up to? I'm intrigued to know.
Well, actually, no, I liked it more as time went on. I'll be honest and say I preferred Kerry Howard's telling of history. She did the Peter Wabbit. Because here's the thing. Doesn't alcohol make us more ourselves? You know, provided you're not completely blotto. So I have to say, I've never met the guy. I'm sure he's perfectly fine. But I find Joe Lycett's style, and I'm only reacting to his style. Don't write, don't phone, don't sue, most importantly. I just find it very superior. That's how it comes across to me. But that might be me being a chippy, a kid from a Bash Street school, comprehensive school kid. You say it's from up your neck of the woods, but it's the posh end, isn't it? Solihull.
Very much so. Yes. Yeah, they're all like him up there. Yes, they all look down their nose at you.
Well, it does feel like. Does that ring any bells with you? Is that
No,
you find any?
I mean, I don't feel that, but I can understand why you would feel that. I mean, I don't really. I'm not a big fan of his comedy. I've seen his stand up, bits and pieces of his stand up. To be fair to him, and he's one of those. He's a bit. I'm not offended by him. I don't think, oh, it's him. I'll switch him off. I'll kind of go with it. But he's not one of my faves, as it were. Do you know what I mean? I don't sort of hold a grudge, but I don't hold a candle either, really. But I can understand how you would think that, and you would think, oh, he has a bit of a sniffy approach. Interesting you say that, because you said you kind of liked it the more it went on, but probably because Kerry Howard does the second half. I liked it less as it went on.
Yeah.
It kind of. Do you know? In as much as if you were out with a drunk for the evening, and you weren't drunk initially, it would all be a bit amusing. But eventually, it would become very wearing.
Oh, have you been a nominated driver then? My
Well, I
goodness, that is the worst gig.
Because I don't drink very much anyway. I mean, I'm not really a great drinker. So I've done that on many an occasion, and it is, it depends how drunk people get, doesn't it? Really, but and that's kind of, I do wonder whether, I mean, I thought they were very clever to do. It was like 2 10-minuters, wasn't it? Really, and that was it. You were out.
It's probably enough.
Yeah, I think they were clever to do that. I think, when you look at it. And I was fascinated to see at one point, I was kind of thinking, how did they make this? What did they do? Because Joe Lycett originally came across as way too coherent and structured in the way he was telling the story. And I thought, I wonder, did they kind of like look at a script but then it became clear at one point when the producer started shouting to prompt him, didn't they? With or was it her with various names? I think with Kerry Howard.
Kerry was prompted a couple of times, which I thought was quite funny in itself.
Yeah,
but coming back to my earlier point, I'm probably stepping in, and you're making a point as well. But Joe Lycett for me became more pompous under the affluence of Inkerhull. And Kerry Howard became sweeter.
Yeah.
But but it could go anyway with anyone. I mean, we've all got different reactions, and mine is mostly my body doesn't really want to know after one drink or two.
I did kind of you then think, oh, I want to watch the rest of the series to find out if anybody got all uppity and started a fight.
I thought you were going to say ended up with the evening over a washing up bowl, emptying the contents of their stomach. Yeah. There has to come a point where you shout, cut, or half cut.
Don't you think, is it just me, or does it kind of send little thoughts into your brain while you're watching it? And this kind of ruins the enjoyment for me a little bit, thinking, well, how drunk would you be on what they've drunk? And you're kind of looking at them and thinking, well, for their body mass, would that be a lot for them to drink? Was that
you're sitting there thinking body mass?
Was that me? Was it?
You're not really enjoying the show, are you? You're not buying into it if you're thinking that, I think.
It's just maybe I just want it all nailed down before we start and go, right, this is how drunk they were.
Can I have the stats? I want millilitres of alcohol per 100 millilitres of blood. What do you want, blood?
Isn't that? I mean, if they said that our participants drank until they were 3 times over the legal limit to drive, you'd kind of go, "Wow, that is bladdered, isn't it?" You know exactly where they are.
Well, you still. I think I hear the sound of people switching off the podcast, but hey, it's you and me, and we're enjoying this. I think that wouldn't be enough. You'd need further information. You'd need to know their drinking history. How it had increased over the years. Was there any professional intervention at any point? And basically, I mean, because you got a list at the beginning. We haven't said this. You got a list of what they drunk, and that must be the total at the end by the end of the recording. But it doesn't tell you that much, because I'd be wrecked after the first 3 drinks, certainly. On the list, and I've felt ill just as they listed all that. Joe Lycett in particular, I think he had drunk more. Comes back to your body mass thing, possibly. And would that help you enjoy the show more if you had all those stats at your fingertips?
Well, I was just thinking it's probably a good job that we don't watch it together, is it? Because by the time we finished the conversation about exactly how drunk they were, it would have finished, wouldn't it? That would have been it, really.
Yeah.
Any laugh out loud moments for you at all? Was just the Joe Lycett section first of all? I mean, was there any points at where you kind of really got into what he was saying? Did you find it funny?
Not with him, really. I had another worry, which I think you have to leave at the door. Which is because I'm over empathic. I start thinking about, because it was true, to be momentarily serious, the train driver, he was wounded at the incident, and then it was linked subsequently. It's not known for sure, but he died young, and it's thought highly likely it was something to do with that.
He died a year after. Mills was
right. I'd forgotten it was that close to the event, so that took the edge off it. Sitting there chortling. I know you're not meant to think these things, but it's not fictional. So they're dealing with something that really happened, albeit you're seeing it through someone's beer goggles. And to be fair, and it was probably judicious editing stroke producing. I mean, there wasn't any point where they seemed to trivialise him being injured. Not so obviously. Maybe a bit around the edges, but not obviously.
No.
But no, I didn't laugh at it. Because it was that pomposity thing. I just thought, I don't feel part of your audience. You're looking down at me. I mean, you've mentioned the Lord Snooty thing. As I say, never met the guy. He's probably a sweetheart. But it's just, and it could be a defense mechanism against hecklers and all of that. And that might have been a thick skin he's had to develop over the years, working in live clubs where you've got plenty of people who are inebriated and don't care whether they tell you and show it.
I was going to mention because he had a kind of odd delivery from the point where he was getting drunker and drunker, wasn't it? Where he kind of said, and he told a story and all of the thing, and I kind of think, I feel a bit mean criticising the way he talks when he's drunk. And and that's kind of the beauty of the whole thing, really, isn't it? I mean, as a concept, what do you think? Because I remember I wanted to get indignant about. I wanted to be on my high horse about this. Not this time round. I'm kind of used to it now. But when I first heard of it as a program, I thought, well, that's really irresponsible, isn't it? You know, I've got all Mary Whitehouse on myself, and you know, people getting drunk. Well, that isn't very responsible because people will get drunk. You know, they'll go out and copy it. I think, well, they do anyway, don't they? There's no point. But did the conceptually, did it give you a problem or not?
No, I tell you what saved it for me, and you mentioned it right at the top. It's the lip syncing of the actors playing out the scenes. I thought that was marvellous. And the way they had to act round the fact that the person, effectively, they're narrating, aren't they? You cut away from them, so they become a sort of out of vision narrator.
Yes.
But then the actors are then lip syncing to those very words. But of course, because the person's drunk, very often the words are not coming out. I mean, we love Spencer Jones already. We can't praise Herbert Clunkerdunk enough. People should check that out on BBC iPlayer.
Yeah.
And anything else that's got Spencer Jones in, including Upstart Crow. But the way he had to sit there waiting for Kerry Howard to get her words out because her brain was mashed. That was just beautiful. It's a new spin on what actors have been doing for years in sitcoms when they have that nice problem that somebody gets a massive laugh before their line and they have to... I always loved that as a kid, the way they act like, oh, there's no audience there. We're in this real scene. It's really happening. But I'm just pausing for a moment and I have to make it look like I've chosen to pause. I mean, that's a real acting skill.
It was. I mean, yeah, it is. It does save it. I mean, and they don't scrimp on it. I mean, it's good direction and good production as well, do they? Because they don't scrimp on the sets and the costumes and the makeup. I mean, they really go full on for it, don't they? And that kind of, for me, rescued it from the... Because I've got this thing about... I'm being conned a little bit if it's cheap TV, which is, you know, when I kind of don't like the game show panel thing, not the game show, the panel
shows,
panel show comedy things that they, and I just think, oh, it's just really cheap TV, and I kind of feel like I'm being screwed a bit, you know, in that sense. But for me, that saves that feeling as well, because you kind of think, well, hang on a second, I'm just watching somebody getting drunk, and then they're cut into these scenes which they've obviously spent a few quid on. I mean, not least the Peter Rabbit stuff, the makeup that that Blake Harrison from The Inbetweeners had,
but also starring Emma Bunton, no less.
Oh, she'd imagine she's cheap as chips these days, isn't she, though? No, she's not.
I couldn't possibly comment, you mean-spirited rotter. I was going to give you a New Year's resolution not to be so mean-spirited, but I forgot to pass it on.
The funniest thing, and I couldn't get my breath with this, and I thought, I can't wait to say this, I'm going to say it now, is that, amazingly, Emma Bunton couldn't lip-sync very well. And I'm thinking, how long did she spend in the Spice Girls?
You rotter! I thought she wasn't bad. I didn't think anyone was bad at lip syncing. In fact, I started to think this is software driven, where there's some clever video editing program that's not my specialism, where it improves the quality of lip syncing.
Yeah.
But clearly you don't believe that, otherwise you wouldn't be calling Ms. Bunton out on that.
No, I think if you watch it, I know we watch it a couple of times each, but I think if you watch it a third time and carefully study Emma Bunton, which I'm sure you won't have any trouble doing if you did watch it another time.
You utter rotter.
Maybe you were looking at a different section of the screen when she was on. I don't know. I was looking at her lips. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. Another part of her anatomy, two parts were referred to later, but by a woman, so you can get away with murder, arguably. Anyway, it's a Tiger Aspect production for Comedy Central, which answers why it's a quality product, because Tiger Aspect don't just throw stuff together. So everyone knew what they were doing, didn't they?
Yeah. And I just look back on some of the, like Tom McKay was the director, who'd previously worked on things like the 10 o'clock show. Ben Rogers, the producer, who previously worked on things like Newsjack. So, like you say, these are not a bunch of novices having a bit of a go at it. I think part of that is because it's obviously come across the Atlantic on the back of Comedy Central, hasn't it? Because Comedy Central being a big company in the US.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And a big channel in the US, and this being a US creation. That's probably and Tiger Aspect had picked it up to be the production company for it. But yeah, I mean, it did. That was the nice thing about it, was that it had some. I mean, and the cast as well. I mean, they didn't. They were all kind of known people, weren't they? There were faces that you knew.
And we've slabbed at other times. Joel Fry has cropped up in a couple of shows we've put on the old slab.
Yeah, Joel Fry, if you don't know, is the guy from Plebs, W1A, Trolley. He's been in loads of things. In fact, he's the voice of the Amazon ads on TV at the moment. Simon Bird from The Inbetweeners, as I said. Blake Harrison, who's the very tall one in the Inbetweeners. He was in Dad's Army. Kate and Koji. So they're all, like I say, these are all well known. And you mentioned Spencer Jones. They're all well known faces or well known people in their own right, aren't they? Should we whack another clip out?
As it were, yes.
And get some Peter Rabbit on ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, so Kerry Howard, who some people may know from the comedy shows Witless. Reggie Perrin, which was the remake of the David Nobbs series, which was Martin Clunes, wasn't it, playing Reggie Perrin in that? I don't know if you saw that one.
No.
She was in that. She also played Young Hyacinth as well, which I think was a one-off drama, which was like a prequel to the Hyacinth Bouquet thing, the Keeping Up Appearances. It was quite interesting. And she's also Russell Howard's sister as well, although I should imagine she hates being referred to as that. But Kerry tells us how Beatrix, or as she later refers to as she gets drunker, Beatrice, Beatrix Potter, having conceived the idea of Peter Rabbit, goes off in search of a publisher.
I'm going to take this to the Royal Botanical Gardens of England. So she goes and she presents this to William Turner Fearston Dyer. William Verner Fearston Dyer. She gives him her paper and he's like, no, it is shit. You want to know why? And she's like, why? You have breasts. You're a female. Females are clinically enabled to draw. You shouldn't be drawing or creating science that is not normal. Get away from the science. Get, woman. Get out of the science box. V slaps him quite rightly and walks out of there and leaves. And William just drinks a coffee and looks to his friend Dave, goes, women.
While that was playing, I was thinking of, we've talked about it before when presumably we were slabbing Herbert Clunkerdunk. So Spencer Jones, in his own live act, which you can catch clips of on inevitably on YouTube, he does this crazy, his shtick is, he's a kid playing in a sand pit, really, isn't he? And he'll say every now and again, he'll say, I'm 38. Or something like that, to say, I really shouldn't be doing this at my age. And it made me think, well, we find out Kerry Howard's got a daughter of 2. I was just speculating what the daughter might think of this when she's a little bit older and sees Mummy sort of tanked up on the box. Anyway, I've thought of a headline, somewhat belatedly, Hangover Square.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not brilliant, is it? And the square question mark is, am I finding the idea a bit square? Does it work, doesn't it? Because I do feel a bit ambivalent, but it seems to be more, as I'm saying, to do with whether I warm to the comedian than anything to do with the alcohol frolics going on.
I think you're quite right with that, and I never even thought of that when I was watching the whole thing twice. I probably because I didn't mind either of them really, neither of them particularly grated. But you're right. If it was somebody that kind of got in your wick when they were sober, to see them drunk would probably not be the best.
It can only get worse, can't it? Really,
the best 10 minutes entertainment, would it? Really? Yeah, it's not going to be. There was, and I think I know exactly what you're saying. But with Kerry Howard, You almost felt like you got a kind of sneak peek behind the curtain. You got to see the real person with her, because she was so she had a warmth, didn't she? And she got more human as time went on. Whereas with Joe Lycett, you're right, I don't think we ever kind of I never really got to feel like I knew him.
No.
Or I saw more of the real him, as it were, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, which leads back to thinking that maybe this superiority thing is hiding the very opposite. Maybe he's desperately trying to, I don't know, I'm doing my amateur psycho sleuth nonsense. But yeah, you'd think he would want to give away a bit more, just give away more without even wanting to necessarily.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Well, I think it's done about 3 series, hasn't it, in the UK, and more than that in the US. I was going to say I'm not really quite. I mean, how much of legs it's got. There isn't really a correlation between how much they've made, is there? Because they have the funds and the ability to make as much as they, as they please, really. But I just want. I mean, as a viewer, I don't think I'd be rushing back to watch lots of other episodes, or maybe I'd watch ones where there were people I think, I'd really like to see what they're like drunk, which is outweighs the story that is being told.
Yes. Well, and the other thing is, and they've warned us up front, it's we haven't mentioned Jimmy Carr doing the voiceover for the show in total. But naturally enough, there's a disclaimer at the beginning that because the people are drunk, whether you can trust the supposed historical facts, in quotes. So you're not going to be watching it and making notes for your thesis on the Great Train Robbery or Bridget Potter. Although it was a revelation to me that, did you know she tried to go down the science route?
No, I didn't realise that, no.
So, yeah, that's a bit of an education. I'm looking at the clock. It is not on our side, sadly. Shall we go to scores, Mr. Oars?
Yeah, absolutely. While we're talking facts, by the way, sorry, it just occurred to me that the thing with the glove, putting the glove on the signal.
Oh yeah.
On the Great Train Robbery, that was true.
Really,
that was actually how.
That's very low budget, isn't it? Basically hiding the green light and then switching the other light to red, or powering that up.
Yeah,
that would have been a bit more complicated. But just putting a glove over the green light, gosh, that's
low tech, isn't it?
Considering they're about to become multi-millionaires, you might have thought they'd invest in something a bit more sophisticated.
Although, having said that, I was just going to say it's low tech, but if you think of it, the fingers on a glove, essentially, it is digital. So,
like it, yeah. And you're sober coming out with material like that. That's the amazing thing.
I could only do it like that. If I was drunk, you wouldn't get it. I'd just be dribbling all over myself. Which I
thought you said,
actually, after the love heart, I have dribbled all over myself. So that's the. Anyway, sorry, you're quite right. Score.
I hope people aren't tuning in late and wondering what's this love heart he's talking about.
They'll think it's
just rewind to the top of the show.
They'll think it's new medication from AstraZeneca, won't they? to keep you going all night.
I prefer Oxford myself. You don't need to refrigerate it so profoundly. Right, shall I volunteer to go first? Because you always think I don't volunteer to go first.
Oh, you're brave.
I'm trying to prove you wrong. I am. Well, is it bravery? I don't know. Dutch courage, maybe.
Sorry, that sounded sarcastic. I didn't mean it to. But go on.
Ooh, you're brave.
Oh, get her.
Back to Julian and Sandy.
Go on then, Mark's out of 5.
I want to give it 3.5 because I like the conceit, and I didn't think about that score too much, which is always a good idea because I overthink. I liked it enough. I suppose I am curious to watch one or two, even if it is, as you say, to find out, as it might be for you, to find out what certain names are like, certain named comedians are like drunk. But it deserves the recognition, as we sort of touched on, the production values, makeup, wardrobe, the whole deal, with the exception of your friend Emma. Although I'm not sure I agree with that, but you probably ruined it for me if I watched it a third time. The lip syncing, but certainly the conceit, the idea of the lip syncing, that just gives it another spin, which of course it wouldn't have had as a radio show, for instance. It wouldn't float quite so well, I don't think.
Started out online, interestingly enough. I just think it's quite.
I'm sure a lot of stuff will in future and is already.
I didn't know whether they were being ironic by saying to Emma Bunton, don't mime very well. You know, it's another dimension. I don't know. I'm making it up now.
You rot. You wouldn't let it lie. Anyway, 3.5 out of 5 from me, and from you.
Yeah, just a little bit behind you. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5.
It's quite generous for you.
Yeah, well, my benchmark for not hating it, not loving it is about 2.5. You know, it's kind of like just straight down the middle, as Bing Crosby once said. It was a little bit above that for me. So a 3 is where I'm at with it. So 6.5 out of 10 for Drunk History UK. And I'll put a link into where you can go and either spend your money or get it for free. Your turn to tell us what you've got in store for us next week.
Yeah, we're going back into time, into the vaults. If it was a popular beat combo hit single, it would be something like a Revive 45. And it is from that sort of era. Whether or not our listeners recall it or admit to recalling it, I'm talking about the decade that Taste often forgot, which was the 1970s. And we find, unusually, I would have thought for the time, an American star in a British-made show. So she'd been an old, I don't mean this as an insult, an old trooper. I mean as a compliment, really. Someone treading the boards for, decades before, no longer with us. But she plays a lady of some substance, enough substance to be able to afford a butler. Is that ringing any bells for you?
Good grief, no. When you said butler,
it's a bit of a curveball.
I was thinking, what was it? Was it the spin-off from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air? Was it Benson or something like that? Was he a butler? Wasn't
Well, that was from Soap, wasn't it?
that was it from Soap. Yes, yeah.
Bel-Air was much later.
And it was a spin-off, but no.
Well, no, a similar formula. I can hear you. That was the catchphrase from that one. No, this is a British-made one, as I say, but with the American star Elaine Stritch and the British star Donald Sinden.
Donald Sinden, yes. Can't remember what it was called.
Drunk. Donald Sinden. Two's Company.
That's it.
As it is on this very podcast. And we're digging into the vaults, Series 2, Episode 1.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a wild card, but hey, I'm feeling wild. I've had a G&T.
Wow. Okay. I like that one. So
mad me.
Two's Company. What did you say?
Series 2, Episode 1.
Episode 1. Okie dokie. All right, that's for next week. And as always, we'll give you the links of where you can still find that one if you can, or whether it's just existing purely in Adrian's imagination.
Dust off the links. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't forget, if you like the Comedy Slab podcast, there are loads that you can go back episode wise and wallow in if that's what you like. In fact, there's 128 before this one, so you can go back and have a listen. And the best ways to catch hold of them are on all the usual podcast aggregators, as they're known in the trade: Spreaker, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We've added a few more actually. The list goes on and on as well. But if you go to your favourite place where you get your podcast from, you should be able to see the back episodes.
Indeed, and you might like to see the back end of us, but hey, we're not going anywhere. We're back again next week. But we are also, we have a social media or anti-social media presence, provided we don't get trumped by Twitter. We are still at Comedy Slab on Twitter, so do follow us there. Everything from obituaries to gags and everything in between. And it's the same handle on our Facebook page, which we'd like you to like. We'd love you to like, at Comedy Slab being the handle for that one as well. Personal recommendation, always appreciated. Tell your friends, spread the word. We're undergoing organic growth, as I believe they call it in the trade. That does sound a bit dubious, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Are you organically growing?
It just sounds like we're rubbing compost on it. I mean, that's how it sounds. And to be honest with you, it smells a bit like it in here as well. But I think that's probably me. I've not been well.
don't wish to dwell on
So until
it's
next
probably
week.
your son's potty train.
Yes, so I found another one.
Sorry,
I found another one.
That's one of your old jokes from the 70s as well. Just before, you've forgotten to give me space to say we'd appreciate hugely a generous star rating on iTunes, Apple Podcasts. Now you can wrap up.
I've given up. I've given up on that forlorn hope, to be honest with you. So until next time, thank you for your company. I'm off, and this is going to work great if you have just come halfway through and you no idea. I'm off to go and suck a love heart.
I've got nothing to add.